Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly O'Shea, and on behalf of Adam and myself, I would like to thank the Institute for giving us the opportunity to come and speak to you here today about a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts. It's going to be a pretty tough act to follow after all the great presentations that we witnessed here this morning, and especially this last one. Especially when we get around to talking about the more boring stuff. There's no flames and smoke and air tankers and fire trucks and that kind of stuff. We're getting down into the more boring stuff, I guess. So just hit enter.
It's just the down button here to close down the presentation.
Okay. Adam and I have been asked to present solutions and answers, and I can assure you that we do not have all the answers. However, we do believe that solutions can be found by working together with all of the stakeholders responsible for wildland fire management in the interface. But in order to do that, I think we have to first of all identify who those people are, or who those organizations are. And if we look at this slide, if you look into the background of the landscape or the wildland, if a fire occurs out there, and it occurs on federal crown land, it is the responsibility of the federal government for the management and control of that fire. If it occurs on provincial crown land, it is the responsibility of the provincial government for prevention, detection, and suppression of fire. If it occurs in a county, it's the county's responsibility. Now, as that wildfire approaches from the wildlands and coming into a community, it enters at what is called the wildland-urban interface, and that is the area where the development or the community meets and intermixes with the wildland. But in fires, major interface fires are generally associated with high winds. So long before that fire front even hits the interface, we now have spotting inside of the community. And this is now a community fire and a community responsibility. The thing in all of this is the fire does not recognize political boundaries. So there's a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of organizations that have responsibility, and they need to work together. Structural protection in the wildland-urban interface is a partnership between homeowners, fire departments, emergency services, community planners, developers. All have a role and responsibility, and they need to work together. The belief that my house is insured, and I've heard it many times, so I don't care, or the fire department will look after it. Anyone who has that kind of an attitude is, in my opinion, is very irresponsible. Because to expect the fire department to deal with circumstances like you saw just earlier, to me is very irresponsible. And is Slave Lake and Kelowna one-offs? I've been involved in this business for 40 years, and I have seen the intensity, the frequency, intensity of wildfires have been increasing over time. That has been my experience. Fire seasons are starting earlier and lasting longer. So is it going to happen again? You bet it is. So this isn't the Portuguese flag, by the way. But what it is, it's an attempt to illustrate how the responsibilities of different government agencies react as we move from the wildland on the left into the more developed areas to the right, and then finally into the communities. And you can see that government agencies have a lead role when you're out there on the landscape. But that role diminishes as you move in to the populated areas. And now there's a whole bunch of other agencies and organizations and people that must assume more responsibility. The other interesting thing is the dotted line. You can see that the value or fire losses out on the wildland is low, but increases as you move into the developed areas, and then increases exponentially once you get into the communities. So, partners in protection. Who are we? Well, Partners in Protection believes in a shared responsibility. We recognize that solutions to wildland and river interfaces is shared among all levels of government: wildland fire agencies, structural firefighters, planners, developers, researchers, educators, insurance industry, et al. Partners in Protection was formed back in the late 80s after the recognition of extreme wildland urban interface fires occurring in the United States, and the recognition that it's only a matter of time before it happens here. We believe in, we're a nonprofit organization that was registered as a nonprofit organization in 1990, and we believe in equal partnership. So when we started out way back then, the idea was it didn't matter what agency you worked for or what organization you were with. When you walked in the door, you hung your hat on the peg. Everybody was treated equally. And that's how we need to approach this thing. So we're all about awareness. That's our main thing, is bringing that awareness to people. Because a lot of people that are living in these situations quite often are not aware that they are living in a dangerous area. And it's also based on the 7 disciplines of wildland-urban interface. And I'm going to go through these really quickly because I think Adam's going to probably elaborate a little bit more on them. First of all, planning and development. There's definitely a need in land use planning and then the development thereafter to recognize, to identify, recognize, and plan for wildfire. And it's very important that any kind of new development, and even existing development, should have hazard assessments completed. There's an opportunity through legislation, through fire codes, building codes, land use codes to address these concerns. Vegetation management, quite often when people talk about FireSmart, the first thing that comes to their mind is they assimilate FireSmart with cutting down trees and making clearings, but it's a lot more than that. It's all of these other things. Emergency planning, very important, because if you don't have a plan in place ahead of time, it's utter chaos. Interagency cooperation, as you've seen this morning, there's a whole bunch of different agencies that have to come together in an emergency situation. So there needs to be methods in place to deal with that. And it's important for cross-training so that fire departments and structural fire departments, wildland firefighters have an opportunity to understand how each other operate. And last but not least, the importance of public education, about getting that message out to the public. When Partners in Protection first started out, one of the first things we did is we hosted 2 international symposiums on wildland urban interface way back in the late 80s. They were very well attended from right across North America, from the United States, Canada. We had folks from Australia and New Zealand, so it kind of was the kickoff for us. And we've had some ups and downs over the years. However, we've had some of our major success. For example, is the Firesmart Protecting Our Community from Wildfire. This manual is, the standards in that manual have pretty well been accepted across Canada. They're used not only in Canada, but in New Zealand, Australia, and to some extent even in the US. We have also worked quite closely with industry. In Alberta, there's a lot of oil and gas development going on out in the wildlands, and we worked with the Alberta Sustainable Resource Development, who Adam is representing, along with the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, to develop FireSmart guidebooks and best management practices out in the upstream oil and gas industry. One of the most recent one is the Farm and Acreage magazine. Over the last 3 or 4 years in Alberta, the major wildland-urban interface fires, with the exception of Slave Lake, that were occurring in the farming areas, where a number of acreages and farm areas were threatened by fire, and there were some losses. So it was recognized that we need to reach out to those folks as well. And we're pretty excited about this one. It should be coming out, I think, this week. And if we get an opportunity here today, we'd like to kind of demonstrate it to you if there's time later on, perhaps. Presently, we're working on a program called FireSmart Canada Communities Recognition, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit further. So where are we today? Right now, today, we've come from a little organization in Alberta to becoming more national. We now have 8 provinces and territories are members of the association, as well as a member from the United States. And we have representation from 5 provinces on our board of directors. Back in 2005, the Canadian Forest Service released a document called the Canadian Wildland Fire Strategy, which Kim will speak to a little bit later. But one of the cornerstones in that document was wildland-urban interface. And it was recognized also in that document that there really was no national identity for wildland-urban interface, or FireSmart. So in 2010, Partners in Protection said, we'll take that on. And we submitted a request to the federal government for some funding to develop a FireSmart Canada. And as a result of that, we ended up getting some funding through the Canadian Committee of Forest Fire Management through the, they had established a wildland fire prevention community of practice, of which we were invited to participate. And through that, we have been able to get some money to do some further work in that area, which we'll talk about a little bit later. In 2011, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the National Fire Protection Association, and that gave us access to primarily to not only their materials and the stuff that programs that they are involved in, but one program in particular, which is their Firewise Communities incentive program, or recognition program, I should say. We've also been somewhat involved and supported by the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, and they've actually been a member of our association for about 3 or 4 years now. So we've had a very good relationship with the Institute, which we appreciate very much. So actually, these 3 events have now launched us on our way. Before that, we were kind of struggling along, but now with the 2003 fires in Kelowna, the last year's fires in Slave Lake, these things are coming more, FireSmart is coming more and more to the forefront, and we're starting to get some recognition. However, the major stumbling block that we have is sustained funding. It's okay to get all of these good piles of money for grants for projects and doing stuff, but we still have not got money identified for the long-term management, administration, and of the organization. So as I mentioned, the NFPA Memorandum of Agreement gives us the opportunity to work together with a world-renowned organization in fire management, and gives us access to a lot of materials and products and programs that have been developed in the United States, which we can bring into Canada. The one in particular, of course, is the Firewise Communities Recognition Program. They have over 700 communities in 40 states that have received the Firewise Communities recognition. And we've been able to, we're in the process actually of developing that program here in Canada. So into the future, at our last board meeting, it was decided to register the association as a Canadian national nonprofit association, become known as Partners in Protection Canada. And we're in the process of developing a national FireSmart strategy. We are also in the process of developing a brand new and improved website, firesmartcanada.ca. And we are ready to launch the first edition of the FireSmart Canada Communities Recognition Program. There's a workshop will be held in Kelowna on March 31st, starting on March 31st. And we plan on having, our goal is to have 2 more communities in Canada before the end of this year. The FireSmart Communities Recognition Program is really a core of the FireSmart Canada initiative. And as I said, it's adopted from the Firewise Communities program in the United States. The whole idea here is to get the buy-in and participation from all of those groups that I identified before, right down to the homeowner. It's designed to encourage local self-organized groups of neighbors and others to work together to do some FireSmart work around the community. That would include, first of all, a community assessment of the hazard and risk, the development of a local FireSmart committee. They would be required to hold at least a one-day FireSmart event where there's a getting together to work around the community and doing some vegetation management or whatever. Invest a minimum of $2 per capita, which can also include in-kind service, and submit an application for recognition by the association. So we've come full circle. When we first started out with Partners in Protection, it was a top-down driven organization. In other words, at the very beginning, we believed that if you didn't have the political will and you didn't have the upper echelon, if you like, you didn't have their support, you weren't going anywhere. And over the years, we've been working more. We recognized also that we needed the bottom up. But it wasn't until we got this program that we can now get into the backyards and work at the local level from the bottom up. And I think that will enable us to connect all those dots and bring all of those responsibilities together. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, and I will say through my introduction that the Alberta Sustainable Resource Development has very much been a leader in FireSmart and wildland urban interface issues in Canada, and Adam is one of the leaders of the Alberta Sustainable Resource Development.
Thank you. Okay, how's everyone doing? I gotta make a little change here because my speaker notes are too small and I can't read them. Okay, so thanks, Kelly. The 2011 fire season in Alberta illustrated the vulnerability of many of Canada's communities at risk to wildland fire. And in the wake of the Slave Lake wildfire, all levels of government are looking for ways to collectively manage wildfire in Canada. Now, the FireSmart manual, as Kelly said, is widely recognized as the preferred standard for community wildfire protection in Canada today. And I'm wanting to show to you how provincial fire management agencies have adopted FireSmart and are delivering it. So when I was involved with Partners in Protection, the question I was always asked was, how do I take all this really good information and bring it to the communities and operationalize it? And so what Alberta Sustainable Resource Development has done is taking the 7 disciplines of the wildland of the wildland-urban interface, the foundation from which FireSmart was developed, combining it with their knowledge and experience in delivering it, have come up with a guidebook for community protection. And that's really what I'm going to focus on today, is how we deliver FireSmart across those 7 disciplines. So this picture here, it actually aligns really well with the FireSmart responsibilities by jurisdiction that Kelly had shown previously, where we're dealing with different FireSmart scales, and as we cross and overlap with those scales, we're finding that we need to work more with and collaborate with other agencies, all levels of government, the private sector and the public. We need to really connect the dots. We need to see FireSmart happening on private land, municipal, provincial, and federal land. This picture here illustrates much of the same situation that many Canada's communities are facing today. So, the FireSmart Guidebook for Community Protection provides the information and tools needed to better prepare communities to withstand the wildfire threat. It all begins by assessing the wildfire hazard and risk. Then you need to come up with building your planning team, which we will call a FireSmart Committee. And from within that committee, you're going to see specialists, wildfire specialists, structures, protection specialists, municipal planning, municipal staff, other provincial government agencies, industry, and Aboriginal interest groups. We need to bring together all the affected stakeholders and sit down and start building the FireSmart plan. So understanding the wildfire problem and what factors contribute to the overall wildfire threat are important inputs when assigning resources and developing wildfire mitigation strategies to minimize the cost plus loss of wildfire and provide for the public safety of those who choose to live in the shadow of fire. And what we're seeing here on the left-hand side is some of the models and tools that are available for assessing the wildfire threat, looking at fire behavior potential, fuels, weather, and topography, looking at fire occurrence risk, so fire history, the relationship between lightning and human-caused wildfires, using that information to identify trends in areas where we need to better focus our energy and our resources. And this is looking at community risk at a larger scale, and then coming into the community and working with the homeowners and working through a site and area hazard assessment, looking at those 3 interface priority zones, that 0 to 10 meters from a structure, 10 to 30, and then beyond. So the first component of the FireSmart Community Plan is a Wildfire Preparedness Guide. And this is an operational guide that provides emergency responders with valuable information that allows for better informed decision making when time is a factor and public safety is being challenged. And this is what a wildfire preparedness guide would look like, and it provides key contact information, special values at risk where there's hazardous values that firefighters and emergency responders need to be aware of early on. It provides fire behavior information, some strategic and tactical strategies, and this is all information that emergency responders can use early on in the initial stages, and it helps with making those timely, better informed decisions that improve their response and suppression capabilities. So this is where we really now start looking at those 7 disciplines of the wildland-urban interface and how they're applied through FireSmart planning. So the wildfire mitigation strategy is developed for municipalities that are exposed or have a significant wildfire risk management profile. And the strategy outlines the FireSmart activities that, when implemented, can reduce the risk and impact of fire. The mitigation strategy is made up of those FireSmart activities built around the 7 disciplines, which I will explain in greater detail. So, education and communication is the cornerstone stone, really. I've heard it said a number of times today that the challenge is a low level of awareness, and we need to be able to have or provide the information and tools necessary that outline the options that homeowners and municipalities can consider when trying to better prepare the people and communities from fire. The effect of wildfire on people and communities needs to be better understood to allow for change. It's a change in the way that we think and act when it comes to fire. Now, building a FireSmart community requires strong partnerships. Elected officials, community planners, developers, government, all levels, industry, Aboriginal interest groups, and homeowners all have an important role to play and all share in the responsibility. Ongoing education is critical to ensure all community members have the information they need to take action and make informed decisions. Successfully implementing wildfire mitigation activities requires the public to understand and support FireSmart practices. What you're seeing here is a picture. In Alberta, what we've been doing is delivering what's called the FireSmart Communities series. And this is a picture that was taken at one of those events. And this series brings together municipal leaders and all those different groups that I had just mentioned to sit down and work with the wildfire management or FireSmart experts to discuss wildfire protection issues. And those who attend leave with the tools, expertise, and contacts they need to help manage their own wildfire threat. Vegetation management. Now, we've heard a lot about this. Yes, it is an expensive practice, but a necessary one. There's a need for fuels management beyond federal and provincial lands. Connecting the dots for effective community wildfire protection requires fuel management activities within municipal jurisdictions and on private land. Removing, reducing, or converting hazardous forest fuels between communities and a potential wildland fire reduces fire intensities, rates of spread, and spotting potential, and it allows for more aggressive firefighting response. The fire behavior potential within fuel modified areas makes wildfire containment and control difficult or at times impossible. So managing hazardous fuels will become even more important and needed at a greater scale and intensity if weather conditions continue to become more severe with the changing climate. Legislation. So it's important that legislation recognize wildfire as a development constraint and that it be considered. Alberta is seeking out opportunities to legislate or regulate FireSmart through different forms of legislation. But the success of FireSmart has always really depended on the interagency cooperation, the partnerships that exist when all levels of government, industry, and the public work together. And that is the preferred choice. However, it goes back to the challenge being a low level of awareness, and sometimes you need to use the stick as opposed to the carrot. So this is, I think, what this audience is probably most interested in terms of development considerations, structural options. And at this point, I'd like to play a quick video just to break up the monotony of me talking and get people kind of re-engaged in the presentation. And this video comes from fire ember research that was done by the sister company to the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction in the U.S., the Institute for Business and Home Safety. And it's quick, it's about 4 minutes, it's an excellent video. If it works. Aha, it works. It's not on the screen. Okay? I'm watching it. I don't know about you guys. It's great.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Alberta's making a very big investment in Slave Lake and FireSmart, $20 million, biggest Alberta's done. The province of Alberta is going to spend $20 million to help Slave Lake be FireSmart going forward. That's a very big investment for the province and for the community. Is that a signal of the amount of investment a community really needs to make? And if so, $20 million times a lot of communities is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And it's a good question. What happened, the devastating effects of the fires and how it affected Slave Lake, and the need for them to, so this isn't gonna happen? Okay, so, sorry, a little sidetrack, but now I'm stuck having to get back to my PowerPoint. So that's gonna be an issue in itself. So while I'm answering a question, maybe could I have someone come up and get me back on track? You know, it really comes down to scale. $20 million is a huge investment for any community to make in recovering from what they experienced and the devastating loss that occurred. The comment was made about how so much investment goes into the pre-suppression and getting the wildfire resources in place prior to, and there should be a little bit of that budget set aside and committed to the wildfire prevention. So better preparing communities and people to respond and to withstand fire when it occurs, in hopes that it minimizes the losses that can be experienced when we see these kind of fires under those kinds of conditions. So I don't know if it's a good example. Here we have Slave Lake recovering from fire, and now I think the question is more what is it going to take communities to prepare for fire, to do the mitigation and to become a FireSmart community that allows them to better withstand fire, where the losses will be reduced. It really depends on the scale of work that needs to be done. If we're looking at fuel management is a very expensive FireSmart activity, but it all comes down to how much of that hazardous fuel needs to be managed. So does that answer your question?
I think too that it isn't just one community. Slave Lake is one of a half a dozen communities in the whole region where the $20 million is being
That
spent.
didn't work at all.
And it isn't just around doing FireSmart as it relates to vegetation management. It's the purchase of new equipment and a whole bunch of those other 6 disciplines within the wildland-urban interface. But it's a good question because it does illustrate the cost of doing business in order to practice FireSmart.
And it was very well demonstrated in Peter's presentation about the investment up front and how that will minimize the loss at the back end. So well, seeing as I'm back on track here, and I apologize for that. That was a good video that I was hoping to be able to share, and wasn't able to do so. So at this point, I guess I'll just get back on track, and we'll hold any other questions until the end, if I can find my place.
There you go.
So what we're seeing here is I worked with Paul and some of his staff to help with developing a protecting your home from wildfire, a FireSmart homeowners version for the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction that really looks at site preparation, so removing, reducing, or converting combustible vegetation in each of the 3 interface priority zones. Some building construction options you're seeing here. So one, looking at fire-resistant roofing materials like tin, clay, composite, or asphalt shingles. Looking at your windows and walls, so choosing tempered thermal or double pane windows that will provide far greater protection than single pane glass. And number 3, we're looking at your vents and eaves, and then decks. So trying to limit the amount of sparks or embers that can get inside or underneath your decks or in past your vents or your soffits that then put the home at a much higher risk. We also look at some wildfire prevention options, safe burning practices, coming up with a FireSmart protection plan, and doing a home and site hazard assessment. Now what you're seeing on the right is what Alberta has done is they've taken that manual, because we didn't really feel that the message was getting across, that there was real acceptance to what we were putting out there, and we decided maybe that our approach was not working. So what we've done is we've taken the learnings from a number of social sciences studies in that very field, and we've combined it with our community-based social marketing strategy to change how the FireSmart message is being delivered, in hopes that it leads to a greater acceptance of FireSmart. So grouping the mitigation activities found in the homeowner's manual into 3 phases that are broken down by cost and complexity to the homeowner. This way the homeowner won't see this as such as an enormous undertaking and begin picking away at it bit by bit, and in time realize that what they're doing is making a difference. I'm not going to go through this because being mindful of the time here. So, phase 1, very simple things that the homeowner can do. And once the homeowner works through this, then they can move on to phase 2. And there's a community recognition component here that can fit very nicely into what Partners in Protection is doing around their community recognition program as well, but at the homeowner level. So once they finish phase 1, someone will come in and look at the work that they've done and encourage them to look at options in phase 2. And then you work through these, and then phase 3, this is where there's a significant cost and complexity, and the focus then being on the first 2 phases that are more realistic and achievable. So wildfire mitigation strategy, the last 3 disciplines: emergency planning, interagency cooperation, and cross-training. This is where wildfire needs to be recognized in the several different emergency plans, the municipal emergency plan, the wildfire preparedness guide, mutual aid fire control agreements, incident command system, and some cross-training exercises. Interagency cooperation is big, bringing together agencies that are involved in wildfire preparedness and response. Items such as FireSmart committees, interface development review groups, mutual aid fire control agreements are all good examples of interagency cooperation. Communications are essential to any interagency relationship. Parties should meet on a regular basis to discuss items of mutual interest, and this helps with prioritizing and implementing wildfire mitigation activities. Brosh training, so bringing together the emergency responders that all play a role in a wildland-urban interface event to ensure everyone is aware of the challenges associated with wildfire response. This is in order for them to be able to respond as effectively and as safely as possible. Fire suppression staff must receive an appropriate level of training in both structure and wildfire disciplines. Now, the intent of cross-training is not to turn a municipal firefighter into a wildland firefighter or vice versa. The purpose of cross-training is to be able to utilize each other's resources and expertise in those non-traditional roles in a cooperative manner. So joint exercises are a great way to create cohesion between all different emergency response personnel. Now, I was hoping to be able to try and connect all the dots here, because what we're seeing is we're seeing efforts on behalf of Partners in Protection and its membership, and then what each individual provincial government agency for wildfire management is doing in the adoption and delivery of their own FireSmart programs. And now we've trying to do it through more of a national cooperative to help with coordinating the FireSmart efforts at that national level through the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers, Wildland Fire Management Working Group, and the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre Wildfire Prevention Community of Practice, of which the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, Partners in Protection, and each wildfire management agency across the country, federal, provincial, and territorial, are all involved. So, what's happening with the SIFC Wildfire Prevention Community of Practice? Well, right now they're working on 3 key FireSmart deliverables. And I believe Kelly had mentioned working on a FireSmart Communities Recognition Trainer workshop that's going to be delivered in Kamloops here in April. And a FireSmart expansion strategy that Alan Westhaver right now, he's chairing the task team to develop this. And this is to provide wildfire management agencies with the means to adopt FireSmart and do so that best fits into their current situations, because not every program necessarily fits with each other's systems, so it's making available all the materials that they can use to then start to deliver their own FireSmart programs. And then Wildland Fire Canada 2012, this is a national conference that's coming up in October. And this is where the overall theme is bringing together the fire researchers and the fire managers to work together, collaborate, and look at ways of coming up with better modern business practices, and just really sharing knowledge and information amongst everyone involved. So, FireSmart Canada, we've been built up today as being the solution, but really we're only the messenger and one small piece of the puzzle. The real solution is when action is taken by all levels of government, the private sector, and the public working together to build a FireSmart Canada. So how can the Canadian home building and insurance industry be involved? Well, insurers need to become more active in promoting and sharing wildfire prevention knowledge and materials to their clients, and explore options to provide incentives to policyholders and communities that take FireSmart action. By investing in models and tools that better assess the community wildfire risk, and that helps with setting premiums that reflect that risk. For insurers to participate proactively in loss prevention efforts, ideally in partnership with public agencies and other stakeholders. The responsibility for resolving the wildland-urban interface issue and better preparing and protecting people and communities from wildland fire lie with many stakeholders and the public. The issues can be solved by coordinated, collaborative actions at many levels, including those of the wildland fire agencies. So, questions? And I don't imagine we have much time, that we need to move on to questions and answers, so we'll forego the web-based introduction to our new product. Thanks.